Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? All those nights when you've got no lights, the check is in the mail, and your little angel hung the cat up by its tail, and your third fiancé didn't show. Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Third Impact Anime. I am your host Bill, and with me today is Austin.
How's it going, folks?
And Sully.
Hello, hello, hello.
And today, we're kind of having a sequel, spiritual successor to our KonMari episode that was recorded way back in episode 44, which it seems like a lifetime ago now. We are talking about the KonMari method again because just recently Netflix has released a new reality show called Tidying Up with Marie Kondo, and we thought that we could get our thoughts on the new show and whether our opinions have changed on the KonMari method as a whole, and maybe how it applies, or has our thoughts changed about it when applying it to anime fandom and fandom in general. But before we get into that, let's see what everyone has been watching or playing. So first off, let's go to you, Sully, since I think the last time you were on was the Castlevania episode.
Right, so it's been a while. It's been a hot minute, as Austin says. So me and you, Bill, we were talking about this before we started recording. I've actually been really kind of burnt out with pretty much everything, like life in general, really, but specifically with anime. So I've not actually been keeping up with anything, and I'm getting to this point where I'm kind of okay with the fact that any anime produced after the year 1999 holds very little interest to me anymore. I cannot keep up with the seasons, so I actually have not been watching anything. I even took a break from watching Maison Ikoko, and what I've been watching right now, believe it or not, is I've never seen Cheers. For as much as I make jokes about being really into Frasier, I've never seen Cheers, so I started about maybe a month ago watching the series all the way through, and I'm at season 5 right now, and me and a friend, without even knowing it, began doing the same thing about the same time, so now we're around the same point together, constantly texting each other, going like, "Oh, I can't believe this happened," or "Oh, I don't like how this was written," and it's kind of like my new thing, and I'm like, this is where I am when I hit 25, as I no longer really keep up with Japanese cartoons, but I'm really into the whole Sam and Diane thing, and I am, for the record, such a Diane, but but one thing I'm not burnt out on is I actually kind of rekindled my love with reading American comics, and I've been kind of, again, though, with the anime thing, it's like anything produced past a certain year for me, if it's like anything past the Bronze Age, I'm very bored, and I'm like, I'm done with this, I'm tired of the edginess, so I've been rereading stuff going back to the Golden Age and the Silver Age, and really kind of going back to those Denny O'Neil Batman stories I really loved when I was in high school, so that's kind of what I've been doing, and also another friend of mine, we've been kind of talking through that again.
Nice. Well, I imagine, because it was just recently announced, you'll be coming back a little bit, because didn't Viz announce that Iris Sriracha is now getting this big, nice edition finally getting released in America?
Yes. Well, Urusei Yatsura did have some comics released by Viz, but they were done in single floppies like American comics were, and they did
love them.
Yeah, they did a few collections, I guess you could call them graphic novels, but they're not very substantial. I know that Edwin was telling me about them before we were recording, but this is going to be like a nice bound omnibus edition with a new translation, and I've seen the cover artwork, and it's just gorgeous, so I'm really excited about that, because if I recall correctly, the original Viz translations, they flipped them, and
yes.
They tried to Americanize them a little bit, but they're also responsible for the Lum curse.
What is a Lum curse?
So, I can't remember her name, but she did an interview about working with General Productions back when they were trying to breach or come into America. And she also was the letterer for Urusei Yatsura, the original Viz run. And she said every person who lettered or did any sort of editorial work on the translation either ended up in an accident or got sick or had an emergency or something bad happened, and it became known colloquially as the Curse of Lum. And so
Wow.
I'm wondering if Lum's dark magic will also be working itself on this edition, because I'm sure if suddenly every manga publisher at Viz or translator or whatever starts reporting that they've caught some sort of disease or have broken a leg, that we know that she has returned with a vengeance.
Well, hopefully the curse-breaking action was releasing it unflipped. So maybe the spirit of Lum is now appeased because she's in her final form.
Well, they flipped it and it flipped her off.
Seems so. Those annoying aliens.
I'm just happy that Lum is getting back in the spotlight with Discotek's release of Beautiful Dreamer. The manga now coming out. She's really having a coming out party. Just rocking out. So it's just like, here I am.
Last September would have been the 40th anniversary of the very first comic being published. And so I guess that's why now, I mean, there's actually been like a lot of Lum merchandise coming out. I know that there's a huge Lum plush that I really want from Japan, but she's about $50 at most places. But let's say she sparks joy for me, and I really kind of want to get her for my collection. But we're really lucky to live in a period where we're seeing a lot of older stuff. I mean, Devilman and Cutie Honey got those omnibus editions, as well as Harlock and now Urusei Yatsura. Even though they're done by different companies, just they're very similar to each other, and it's kind of nice seeing those works getting respect. And when Bill mentioned Beautiful Dreamer, I want to encourage everyone to buy that Blu-ray or DVD, because if more of those get bought, if we get more excitement, then hopefully more of the films, and even more hopefully the actual series will finally get a new release here, an updated Blu-ray, hopefully.
Yep, that'd be great. I could totally see, because Urusei Yatsura is a fairly long show. I could totally see them trying to do the SD on Blu-ray model for that one, and hopefully release it in just like maybe 1 or 2 sets. Something that wouldn't be too cost preventative. I know that there was a fairly large-scale Blu-ray release of Urusei Yatsura in Japan, but I don't really know if Lum Fever is like hot enough to sell like large quantities of Blu-rays in the US, so it might be more cost effective if Discotek were to get the rights to the series to just release it in 480p on SD on Blu-ray. But what do I know? I've got no idea. That's just my brain thinking.
They'll
I'm
probably
hoping
do
everyone catches Lum Fever.
They'll probably do what they're doing with the Lupin Red Jacket and just release it in different DVD sets.
That is true, but and that is an interesting thing too, because they could probably release it a lot faster and in a lot smaller quantity if they did it all on like a single or 2 Blu-ray discs. But I'm sure that always depends on the project individually.
Well, I'm just amazed with all these 70s manga re-releases with Devilman, Captain Harlock, now Urusei, you can never say it right, Urusei. Where's my Lupin the Third re-release? I'm tired of hunting down these Tokyo Pop volumes. Come on.
I thought you said that manga was just like not good.
I'm denouncing what I said. I want all the Lupin, even if it is bad.
Bill is a true completionist. I mean, I felt the same way when I think it was Funimation said they're releasing Time Boken 24, but only as a digital release. And I'm like, that's not helping my problem here. It's like, I don't care how I might be the only person who cares. No, you have to do a physical release, because when the end of the world comes, I'm going to need that DVD.
True.
And now, Austin, what have you been up to?
Well, I have been, the busiest thing that I've done lately is that you and I, Bill, we went to Ichiban Con last weekend, and that was fun, with a lowercase f, I would say. But I have been preparing myself physically and emotionally for the release of Kingdom Hearts 3 coming out here in only a mere 11 days from the time of this recording. So I'm very, very excited for that to come out. I've been replaying through some of the games a little bit. I've been playing some more Dream Drop Distance, but most recently I finished up another playthrough of 0.2, the Aqua story. That's basically Kingdom Hearts 3 Chapter 0, because the ending of that one basically leads directly into the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 3, with it ending with like Sora, Donald, and Goofy flying off in the gummy ship off to Olympus Coliseum, and that's pretty much how Kingdom Hearts 3 is going to start. So I'm very excited about that. The hype is real. I've got my Super Mega Ultra Limited Edition pre-ordered. It's already paid for. It should be coming in the mail. I hope Square messes up and sends it to me early. That would be awesome. I hope they don't mess up and send it to me late, forcing me to go to Walmart or something horrible like that to buy a copy of it on release day, only to then sell it as soon as it comes in the mail. But I don't want to have any weird overlap where I don't get to play the game if it's out. So that game will be in my hands.
Well, I will say it's been nice knowing you, Austin. I will miss you while you're on your month trek to get through Kingdom Hearts 3. I know a podcast on it will come eventually when you get through it. So I'm just saying my goodbyes now, so that way I won't be, where's Austin? Oh wait, I know, he's playing Kingdom Hearts 3.
That will be the case for likely a few months to years, or possibly until Kingdom Hearts 4 comes out, which will be probably when the PlayStation 7 launches.
Yeah, knowing off Kingdom Hearts, the timeline, Kingdom Hearts 3 will be released, and then you'll get a bunch of side stories and spin-offs for about 10 years, and then you'll get Kingdom Hearts 4.
As long as there's something to play, I mean, Nomura's been playing with my heart since I was 11 years old. He can just keep on doing it.
Well, hopefully he won't go breaking your heart.
Yeah.
He couldn't if he tried.
Yeah. So, Ichiban Con, Bill.
Yeah, Ichiban Con. I would also say it was fun with a lowercase f. Ryan and Marissa, fellow Third Impact crew, did some panels, and I think they did really well with some bad circumstances.
I completely agree. They did their Batman in Japan panel again, among other things, and I really, really liked that panel. And Ryan finally listened to me through Sully, finally Ryan listened to Sully through me and included the canceled Godzilla versus Batman thing in his panel. So exactly. So I remembered that you had mentioned that, Sully, way back in the Batman Ninja episode, I think. And he finally put it in the panel, and it was awesome.
You know, if he doesn't have it, there is a script floating around. I think I might have a copy, because it is bonkers.
Yeah, I think he said that he read it, and he mentioned it in the panel. So yeah, people are aware that it is out there.
Yeah, but their panels were really good. But what happened to them was they were usually in a room separated by a fake wall next to the big music thing that was happening at the time. So one night it was the lip sync battle, where they were playing every Mimi song that you can think of that would happen at a con. Bohemian Rhapsody, YMCA, all that was next was Fireworks by Katy Perry needed to start playing.
Yeah, all of those, classic anime tunes, like All-Star by Smash Mouth, Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley, just all those classic anime tunes.
All they need to play next is, what's that Dragon Force song, Fire Through the Flames.
Through the Fire and the Flames.
Yeah, that's it. Then I think they've covered every internet song per year at that point. So
play the entirety of Emotion by Carly Rae Jepsen.
Maybe Rebecca Black's Friday.
Oh man.
But yeah, and then another night they had the Hamilton sing-along panel.
I love that anime.
Which, when I think of anime, I think of Hamilton.
Me too, man. This is what you think of.
Yeah, it's just that I'm not surprised that got in because of its popularity, but it's just like it's not even tangentially related to anime.
But is it though? Because like I'm not in. I don't know anything about Hamilton other than the basic premise. But like I remember it being big like 3-ish years ago. Because I remember like the first time I went to Ichiban is when they were Hamilton cosplayers and they were going to have a sing along. I don't think it actually happened, and now I'm like. I thought that the fire had burnt out at this point. I mean, am I wrong?
I think it's one of those things, like, there's always going to be that small group that really hangs on to, like, that specific fandom thing that was mega popular a few years ago. There's always going to be some people still riding the waves of that and still enjoying, like, actively enjoying that thing, even when most of the community seems to have moved on to something else. That's kind of true with Doctor Who right now, because, like, I would argue that the modern peak of Doctor Who was probably, like, 2009 through 2011, but obviously that show's never going to go away. It's just going to change its levels of popularity, and there will always be some sort of Doctor Who presence at like anime conventions or sci-fi cons or comic cons or whatever. It's always going to be around.
Or at an anime convention, there will always be a Homestuck panel, which was
inexplicably somehow there will be.
I feel like Homestuck is more explicable than Hamilton at this point, though.
I would agree, because Homestuck, at least, I mean, I don't know that much about it, but doesn't it, like, it references anime in it.
But it ended, like, 5 years ago.
I thought it was still going.
It's just...
I don't think so. No, it's over.
It's over. Like, the guy who created it, I think, ended it. So... Yeah,
I just remember it just came like as a wave, and I just sort of surfed the top and just like, you know, it'll go away eventually, and I guess I just never noticed when it did.
Yeah. But other than some of the weird panel choices, there was some good stuff. Like there was a really good video game quiz panel that we went to.
That was so well organized. I don't remember that gentleman's name, but he did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I mean, and also he traveled pretty far. I think he was like, I traveled like 4 or 5 hours just to be at this convention. So
yeah, he said he came up from Georgia, because didn't you say that you also went to that same game show at Anime Weekend Atlanta?
No, well, I think that was him. Like he said, he was at AWA.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, Bill, you weren't at AWA. Never mind. Ryan said that he went to that one, I think. It's either Ryan or Edwin told me that he went to that same game show.
Okay. But yeah, it was well produced. But the other panel, I have to mention it because I am a fan of it. I went to the One Piece panel, kind of excited because it's like, well, I'm a One Piece fan, so... I want to see, because based off the title, it sounded like an introductory guide to One Piece. And I want to get as many people into One Piece as I can, and I wanted to see how this person would do. So, I go in there, it's an older gentleman. He has a bunch of video clips laid out on the screen. So, of course, he starts out with the 4Kids One Piece song, which everyone and their grandmother knows. And then afterwards, he goes, well, I didn't do any preparation for this. and it just made me so frustrated that it's just like, really, dude? You didn't do any preparation? So it basically turned into audience Q&A. And because it's One Piece, it had what I'm going to credit, this is a Tobias phrase, is it had the Gundam effect of... Well, since it's a Gundam panel, the only people that show up to it are Gundam fans. And that was the exact same thing for this panel, where he basically asked the audience, who is just starting out with One Piece? No one raised their hands. Who is in East Blue, which is the very beginning arc? No one raised their hands. Who's at the time skip, or who's past the time skip? Everyone raises their hands. Who is at the latest arc? currently in the manga right now or in the anime, everyone raises their hands. And it basically becomes a discussion of what's going on in the current arc. And I'm like, this is cool because I'm a One Piece fan and it's cool to talk to people about it, but this isn't what I was sold on based off the title of this panel. And as someone who is a part of a group that does, I think, really well done panels, I'm just frustrated that you had come in with no preparation whatsoever except for video clips, and has basically inspired me where I'm just going to say, screw it. No one is doing the proper One Piece panel in my eyes, so I'm going to do one, damn it. I don't know if it'll get approved, but AZ 2019 One Piece panel hosted by yours truly is coming if they approve it.
Yay.
Bill, you are on the warpath. I admire that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And then the last thing I wanted to mention was the Otaku Flea Market.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Which I did really well, and I think Austin did really well in selling things that we had grown to want to get rid of. Because Austin and I shared a little table. And of course, I love the Otaku Flea Market because you can get really good deals, and it's always interesting to see what's in there. A lot of Tokyo Pop volumes, some figures, a lot of people selling older DVD sets. I personally did really well. I found a Major Kusanagi Ghost in the Shell figure, a Figma figure, for $25, which is really good because those usually go up a pretty high price.
Yeah, even secondhand. Typically, I've never seen a Figma used. Well, I've never seen a legitimate Figma used for anything less than like $50.
Yeah.
So typically their retail price is around $80 to $90.
Or yeah, at the best you could get would be like $60. So
it really depends on the character and like how big the run was.
That's very true. But still, I've never heard of a Figma going for $25.
So I did really well. Oh, and I did get one other thing. I got a Jigen Lupin III figure. So now I have the whole gang. I have now in figure form. The family's together. It's a very happy occasion. But yeah, Austin.
Very good. You got to keep the gang together.
Yeah, but Austin, how was your flea market experience?
It was generally pretty good. I gathered myself up a nice little laundry basket full of things that no longer sparked joy for me, and I decided, well, I can, help other people, give other people the spark of joy that I once had for these items. I can pass that on to somebody else, and I can make a little bit of extra cash on top of it to pay for my badge and whatnot. Because this year I made a horrible mistake. I did not submit a single panel to Ichiban Con because the deadline for entry just came and went, just flew right past me, and I didn't get a chance to get my panels in. So that kind of sucked. I think that kind of affected my whole convention experience because I'm so used to going to these things and doing like many hours of panels, and I really like that. Like, it's a lot of work, and sometimes it can be very stressful to be like, oh, I have to be here at this time and here at that time, and I get to get up really early because I've got somewhere to be, and I've got to sort of be on to do my panels. Like, I've got to have my brain going. I've got to be thinking about audio, visual, and all the stuff that I want to say, and all that stuff, all going on in my brain at once. So this particular convention sort of felt like a weird vacation, but in some ways it felt like an awkward retirement. Because it's like I know what I should be doing here, but I don't have to, and now I feel weird about it.
Well, I think it reaffirmed what you liked, and it also showed you like what issues you have with certain panels and what you like about certain panels. And so I think it's you can look at it as like it was a reflection of what I like about cons and paneling and what I want to do. So that's how I would do it.
I completely agree. I would agree with that very much. It did give me a chance to go see some panels that I wouldn't otherwise go see, a lot of which I was a little bit disappointed by for a variety of reasons. But I did get to meet Steve Bloom for the first time. He's a really kind guy. I really, really love Cowboy Bebop, so getting to get Spike's autograph is awesome for me. I'm going to hang it up right next to my Shinichiro Watanabe autograph, so that's fun. Let's see, what else?
And my other mentions of the con is, one, this will be coming out from Third Impact Anime. We are going to make Con Bingo based off certain things you always see at an anime con.
Yes, that is a thing that we're going to start working on, and hopefully we can have those ready for Animazement. So more information on that later, but I'm excited to put that together.
Yeah, I think it'll be really fun. And if you've been to cons, a number of cons, you'll the stuff you'll see on the bingo board, you will relate to.
Yes.
And I guess the winner of most cosplayed character or franchise this year at the con was, of course, My Hero Academia, because it is the most popular mainstream shonen anime at this point. I think it's overtaken Attack on Titan at this point.
Oh, by a huge margin.
Yeah. So.
And I can't blame him because, way back in the day, whenever Titan first came out, I cosplayed from it, and man, those belts are a pain in the butt. And I'm sure it is way easier for someone to, buy that UA uniform and just slap it on and just have a grand old day.
And get a green wig and you're good to go.
There you go. A little Count Dooku right there.
I will say that in doing my Link cosplay, the belts, they feel like they cut on your skin when you move. They're just not very comfortable when you move.
No. Alright, you guys ready to move into KonMari?
Yeah.
They have so much stuff.
It's a never-ending battle to fight the clutter.
With the baby coming, we got to get our stuff in order.
We had to downsize from a 4-story house to a 2-bedroom apartment.
I lost my husband. I don't know that I have everything it takes to get rid of his belongings.
Hello, I'm Maria Kondo. 私のミッションは片付けによって世界をときめかせていくことです。Let's start tidying.
This girl's no joke.
This is amazing.
We have too much stuff. It's official.
It's so hard to let it go. I don't want to just, dump it. I want to be thoughtful about it.
Choose items that spark joy for you.
Spark joy. It's not as easy as I thought it was gonna be.
We're on board. We want to change. I just want it to be strong enough to change me.
I can let it go. Arigato.
I am going to figure out what sparks joy in my life.
I can't believe you can touch the carpet.
New day, new joy.
Thank you for being here for us and wanting to help us.
I hope you know how much this means to me.
Here we go.
Now, if you haven't heard of Marie Kondo, she is a self-help guru who gained notoriety with her organizational method, the KonMari method, and her book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, first published in 2011 and then released in English in 2014. The basic premise of the KonMari method is we need to organize our life by getting rid of what doesn't spark joy in our lives. So the way she describes it, it's this feeling that we have when we hold an item that could be anything from clothing to electronics to childhood toy, anything that counts as a possession in your home. Through the word of mouth, the KonMari method has gained a strong following, and on January 2019, this year, Netflix released Tidying Up with Marie Kondo, a 6-episode miniseries where Marie Kondo helps couples or families organize their living spaces. the reason why we're doing a sequel for KonMari is because of the Netflix show. So I think we should start off there. What did you guys think of the Netflix show Tidying Up?
Mm-hmm. So I guess, Sully, since you sort of, back whenever we did this first episode, you introduced us all to Marie Kondo and her interesting ways of dealing with junk. So yeah, what did you think of the show, since you were sort of a pre-established fan already for quite a while at this point?
Well, I think it's kind of important to mention that I first kind of came to know her through her book, and I didn't actually read her book. I listened to the audiobook, and when I listened to the audiobook, the woman who reads it is very stern and talks in a very calculated, almost staccato manner, and she sounds very cold. And then when you watch Marie Kondo, the person, on TV, she is this very sunny, effervescent woman who's just very bouncy and cutesy, and it's very different, I think, than the book, which both a combination of me listening to that person reading it and the actual translation is very robotic in places. I think some of Marie Kondo's eccentricities or idiosyncrasies are actually more of a result of this way that she kind of comes across in the book, which was translated, looking back at it and reading some more about it, somewhat awkwardly, and didn't sort of explain some of her background quite a way. So it was really refreshing to see her in person, in her own element, being so, bright and happy, because even when she's on, like, Good Morning America, she's a little more reserved, but here, she seems, as one person put, to be this sort of Japanese Mary Poppins who just sort of comes into your life and wants the best for you,
I love that.
So I really kind of took even more of a shine to her as I watched this, because I kind of was worried. I'm like, a lot of her stuff is very regimented and sort of, it can come off as robotic, but seeing her explain it in person, it seems a little more like common sense. Like, yeah, maybe you should put things back where they belong, or, well, if you fold them this way, it might look a little better, or it might be easier to reach, instead of it coming off kind of as, like, if you do it this way, it'll be more efficient, human person. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I have calculated this to the nth degree. It's a little more humanistic and fun, the way she shows it in the show.
Yeah, and I think her methods are sort of, whenever you can see them directly contextualized in how they're supposed to be performed practically, rather than just like reading her book or reading an article or whatever. And just to see the way that she explains it to people sort of in real life, it's just like, it's exactly what you said. It's like, oh, well, this does make sense. Like her rather peculiar and very specific way of folding clothes, for example, it makes a lot of sense, because the way that she does it, you can clearly see exactly what each folded piece of clothing is. It's very purposeful. It's not just quirky for the sake of being unique or what have you. It's like it's very purposeful, and she explains it very well, and she walks people through it. She's very kind, and it just works.
Yeah, one thing I want to talk about is just this show is very different from typical reality shows that you'd see on TV. So I'm gonna use like it's not the same thing, but it's similar to where a show like Kitchen Nightmares, where Gordon Ramsay comes in and he's going to fix your restaurant or your hotel, and where, unlike most American shows where the host or the person who's coming in to fix the thing is there all the time and is also very combative with whoever they're trying to help, this is the exact opposite. Where Marie Kondo comes in for like a day and basically describes kind of what's the idea of the KonMari method, and then she says, goodbye, I'll see you in about a couple weeks, where the couple or the family has to do it pretty much on their own, and they're also they might be a little confused on the KonMari method, or they might not understand it at first, but they're not very combative, which is something I had to get used to as I was watching the show. I was like, why aren't they like, no, this method doesn't make any sense. Why wasn't there any... I was a little surprised that there wasn't any like typical American production of just like this creepy like violin music of just like there's a conflict happening. This is
like the manufactured drama of reality shows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that show that was like really popular in like the early 2000s, How Clean Is Your House, with the two British ladies who come over and there's like the psycho strings playing over the dirty houses. But here, like, she comes in, she's like, oh yeah, your house is nice, like it's cluttered, yeah, but you know that she even says I like mess. It's very sort of she seems like a therapist almost. Like, she's not here to judge you. She's just like, you said you needed help. Here I am. I'm here to help you. I'm not going to turn your home into a sideshow spectacle. And that was, weirdly refreshing for me. It's just, I know she comes into the house of the family who's downsizing, and me, if I were in there, I'm like, this is just so cluttered. I'm stressed out. But she's just like, if you wanted me to help you, here we go. But you have to do it. Like, she's frequently like, I'm not a maid.
Right.
Or like I one episode I watched was I think a Pakistani family that lived in California, and the wife or the woman of the household kept saying like, I can't wait for you to do your magic, and she kept repeating that saying over and over again, where eventually KonMari said, well, I'm excited to help you, but I don't do magic. It's you that has to do it. And right. The thing that's interesting about the show is they give people camcorders or some sort of camera where it's themselves recording them doing the KonMari method, and it's a lot of self-reflection of just like, this is my issue, and it's them talking it out with their family, not really talking it out with Marie Kondo, which is different. Usually it's the host or the person who's coming in to fix it they always go to talk to about their problem.
Right. And I think that one part of the KonMari method that's very unique compared to a lot of other shows like this, or that it can be in a certain way, is that she kind of just gives them the tools and gives them the direction and then just pushes them in the right direction to go, and they ultimately have to make the final decision. Like, even when they ask for her consultation on things, just like, well, do you think, or like, should I really keep this? Should I get rid of this? So-and-so. She's just like, she contextualizes it in a way that they make the decision, and she doesn't make it for them.
Mm-hmm. Where she kind of, it's very much like a therapist, where she might give like a simple, like, how does this relate to you? Or like a simple suggestion, but she keeps it vague enough where it's really up to the family or the individual person to decide.
Kind of like what you said, Sully. She approaches this in a very non-judgmental way, and I think that the fact that she there's so many moments where she actively empathizes with what the people are doing, where she talks about like, oh yeah, like my house is messy sometimes, my kids are, I had to teach them how to clean too, they're not all perfect, and like sometimes my house gets messy, I'm not always perfect, sometimes I struggle with these things too. So it's not like she's sort of depicted as this perfect person. She struggles with the same things. It's just that she's sort of crystallized a method in which she thinks that people can really benefit from doing things in this particular way, and then she's just like, well, hopefully that this can work out for you.
And I think the other thing is just like, that's the image that people have of her, because she looks so perfect in like the different colored dress that she wears with a white top, and very much like, you seem to be all together, when throughout the show she's like, no, I have my difficulty moments, and I have messes too, where it's not completely perfect, which is a nice change of pace.
It's really interesting to me because in the book, like, she says, like, you have to do it in this order and you should do it this, and like, it's very regimented, and I sort of expected her to be more rigid, but she frequently says, well, if you think this will work better this way for you, then that's completely fine. And I think, that's so much more approachable, and I think that's why it might work a little better for a lot of people, because she's not really asking you to change your life. She's just asking you to be more mindful about how you take care of your possessions and organize your home and add new things into your home. And, when we think about minimalism, which she's often compared to, and I think that's a very unfair comparison, like I said, I think she's more mindfulness than minimalism. You see the pictures of the very stark white houses that have nothing, and they're very very almost overly pretty and very empty and full of straight lines. And when you see the after pictures of the other houses, like, they look like their houses. They don't look like minimalist design pieces that people talk about and people write about. They look like people live there. They just look like cleaner, more organized people live there. Like, they still feel human and lived in, as opposed to, I think, what people think, well, the after picture will look like, where it looks like, a combination of a rock garden and an Apple ad.
Or where it'll be cold and sterile. But no, like you're saying, it still looks like people live in these houses. And one thing that I like about the show is the organization of your possessions is a key thing, but usually the messy house is hiding another underlying problem. Like, there's a young adult gay couple that has this feeling of wanting to be more mature and maturity, and wanting to be have more not acceptance, but seem more adult.
Being able to impress. What was the one guy really wanted to impress his parents or something?
Yeah, wanted to really impress his parents to show that he was more. He was growing up being more of an adult. How in the first episode it's a family with 2 young kids, and their main issue is just like they feel like they have no life because they're constantly going back and forth between managing their kids and taking care of the house, and they feel that there's bad communication between them. Whereas by getting rid of the clutter, it allows them to focus on the problem that was hiding all along.
Right, exactly. And sort of she hammers home that idea of how your living space affects you in many ways. Like, she does this small little thing every time she comes into a new house, where she peacefully, like, sits on the floor and she does what she calls, like, greeting the house. And she contextualizes it in the first episode of being like, just take a moment to sit quietly and just think about your living space and thank it for what it does for you. And I think maybe to an American audience that seems kind of weird, but I think that partially that probably comes out of the Japanese idea of, like, everything having a spirit to it, sort of a cultural thing that they value. And I think that that's really important, because American culture seems to be like, we just treat things as things, not as something that we should really appreciate or necessarily be thankful for. And I think a lot of people sort of throw around the phrase, be thankful for what you have, but they sort of forget what that really means and what that looks like, in how you're supposed to, like, deeply think about that, not just on a surface level. It's like, yes, I'm thankful for my DVD collection, but I'm not thankful for my DVD collection just because I have it or because it exists. I'm thankful because it brings me joy, if that makes sense. So in a way, I am thankful to
and
it
even with things
for
that aren't
bringing me
necessarily
joy,
like fun items. Like, I think about when I was a child, my mom and grandma used to say, like, don't be so heavy-handed with that, or, like, put things back with it. Like, respecting items, like, in, like, well, yeah, my shoes or the spoon or whatever aren't exactly my favorite things. Like, they don't jump up at me and I think, God, I love that I have them, but I use them every day and they serve a purpose, and maybe I should be more careful or more considerate to the things that I have, and so they'll last longer and they'll look nicer, and I won't have to go get a new or whatever. Like, I feel like the sort of animism that she shows towards objects is more just like, well, you're pretty lucky to have these things. It's almost like that, there are some people in this world who don't have XYZ argument, but kind of not saying that, but have this thing, and it serves a purpose. It's a tool in some way, or it's a beautiful thing in some way, so respect it and enjoy it and appreciate it.
Right, it's like my refrigerator does not necessarily spark joy in a sense, but I really like to eat, and I like to eat fresh food, and that sparks joy, and my refrigerator helps me get to that point. So in an indirect way, it's like, well, duh, of course my refrigerator sparks joy.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that people get hung up on with the KonMari method is when she says sparks joy, people take it at face value, and it's a very simplistic phrase on face value, and people get hung up on that. But I think just the key thing is, like, do you have a strong memory with an item? Is it practical in your life? I think that's the way I would approach the KonMari method of, does it have a strong emotional attachment to me? Do I actively use it throughout the week or throughout the day? Is it practical or useful within my life?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I would approach it.
Mm-hmm. Or if it's something that you just really, really appreciate having, and if it's a non-essential and you have it and it doesn't really bring you happiness, then it's okay to part with it. And that's sort of the idea of her tidying process. Sort of, it allows you to sort of step back, look at all the things that you have, and think, okay, so what of the things that I have do I really actively like or love or enjoy or need, and then everything else you can let go of.
Yeah, like a prime example, kind of going to our flea market talk at Ichi. One thing I took with me was a DVD copy of Wolf's Rain that I had bought a couple years prior, and I sold it at the flea market because I bought it on a whim. I've had it for probably 3 years at this point, and I still have not actively watched it. So I probably, knowing myself, if I haven't watched it in 3 years, I probably am not going to get to it anytime soon. So I am going to sell this to someone who will probably enjoy it way more than I do.
Understandable, and that's a perfectly logical way to think through that situation when evaluating how you feel about this certain item.
Yeah. One other thing I like to mention about the show is I like the diversity in the people that she goes to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the first episode, it's a young couple dealing with 2 young children. Another one, it's a widower. Another one, it's a gay couple that's kind of getting into young adulthood. There's a older couple that's about to enter into retirement age. So I think just the diversity of the people that she sees brings about at different situations, and it doesn't get repetitive, which I think is appreciated as a viewer.
I agree, and it sort of just goes to show that this is not something that only applies to young people or only is like only the kids are into it or something like that, and this is not anything that mom and dad can benefit from because they're old or whatever, but this is something that's like useful for everyone because, I mean, we've all got, to some degree, a lot of us, well, let me restart that thought. A lot of us have too much stuff, no matter how old or young you are, and it's okay to evaluate if you really want all that stuff.
One thing's really interesting is I read an article that's like, isn't the KonMari method only really applicable to very wealthy people? Because it's a very fair criticism that minimalism in itself, again, which is often kind of tied in with her, even though I don't think that's fair, is very much associated with the affluent. And I don't think this is, because it's not asking you to get all your stuff, it's asking you to think, you know, do I consume more than I need, or do I buy things frivolously, or do I not organize my home? I mean, it's as much about organizing your home and putting things back where they belong. Like, the amount of time she says to people, put things back where you belong, is kind of funny. But I was reading an article where this woman who was writing about KonMari and the TV show was saying, I can't afford a toaster that sparks joy. I have to live with the one I have, and that's kind of not listening to what she's saying. She's not saying, your toaster doesn't spark joy, go buy a fancy, pretty one you like to look at. She's saying, well, what sparks joy about the toaster is learning to appreciate, and treat it better, and, be happy that you have something that makes toast for you. And I feel like a lot of the sort of hot takes that people are giving about this are kind of disingenuous. I'm not saying there's nothing that can be critiqued about Mari Kondo. There's some things she does I don't agree with or approve of, but for the most part, I'm like, how dare you try to attack this sweet ball of sunshine who only wants to clean the world?
It's a hot take machine right now going on the internet, and that's really bugging me, just because it's like, her method has its issues, of course, and nothing's perfect, but I think it's just people are over-focusing on the simplicity of the message and the wording especially, of sparks joy. And I think just people think of, what does that mean in the abstract, because it doesn't have a very strict definition when people first hear it. And it can be a flexible definition depending on the person. And so I think that's where a lot of the hot takes are coming from, is just the very, like, this isn't a hard definition that I can understand, which is just kind of like, well, it's really up to you and how you interpret it. And when it comes to joy, like, a joyous thing to you might be an anime figure. It might be just your car, or it could be a simple, like, toy that you had growing up. Like, for me, what sparks joy for me is, growing up, I played a lot with toy soldiers and Hot Wheels and Matchbox, and I love those things, and even though I don't play with them anymore, I'm still going to keep them because of the strong memories they have for me.
Mm-hmm. And that's a perfect example of spark joy, so Mari Kondo would want you to keep those.
It's interesting, though, that she sort of has this idea of making sure your house is in order so your life is in order, and people have talked about how that ties to control. And I have to admit, the reason I actually wanted to seek out the book to read in the first place was I felt like my life was out of control, and I felt, mostly for me, it was also the stress of constantly moving and moving books and figures and clothes and being like, okay, what if I just had less stuff? And then the book, and one of the things she says I disagree with, she's like, oh, if you try this, you might lose weight. And I'm like, I little out there, and I don't think that's how the body works, but okay. And I will agree that one of the reasons I did it, and I read an article saying this, is I got into it because it gave me a sense of control. It's like, well, I have less stuff to worry about, and my environment feels very... It's like I have shaved off the excess, so I feel as though I'm in control, and I think that's where a lot of... some of this backlash also comes in as people, saying, oh, it's human to be cluttered. And I'm like, yes, it's I want a house that feels lived in. I don't want to live in these minimalist spaces where it's very empty and cold and feels like it only exists to look good in a picture. But like I said, when you see the after pictures in the TV show, like, they don't feel inhuman. They don't feel so beautiful that they're, untouchable, like you're scared to live in them. No, they just feel more organized. There's a difference between, like, her Instagram feed, which is made to be an advertising thing, and then the reality of these people's homes after they do it with her.
Right.
Yeah, I think also you could apply it to people like the KonMari method because, like you were saying, it gives people a sense of calming and gets rid of stress, and also I think it probably also gives them a sense of, well, the outside world, whether that be my job or politics or whatever stresses you out in the outside world, having a organized, somewhat organized house gives me a sense of control and calm, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm. And it's something that most people have, even if they don't necessarily live by themselves, most people do have some sort of ability to control the way that their living space is on some level. And I think that level of control can be liberating for some people, because they can be like, well, I might not be able to affect so much in the outside world or my job necessarily or school or what have you, but I can decide how my room looks or something like that. And when it looks good and is pleasing to you, well, that can be pleasing can be more than just on its surface level. That can please you in a deeper way that makes you feel more in tune with your space and more confident that where you're living is not a stressor.
I just have two minor complaints about the show. Overall, I really like the show. My only complaints are Mari Kondo is Japanese, and so she has a translator with her to talk to the majority of the families. And one thing that Netflix does, which kind of frustrates me, is sometimes they'll have the translator speak on her behalf, or she will just talk in Japanese and then the subtitle will come up. And this is more of an aesthetic choice of just, I kind of wish they chose one or the other and not both, because it just kind of just like, as a sense of order, I guess, in my head of just like, well, could you just have either the translator talk all the time or have her subtitled? It's just, it's kind of, it's a little OCD thing, I know.
I think that might be because the show's probably also going to be in Netflix in Japan, so they probably have edited it slightly differently depending on the region, and so it would make more sense for them to see Kondo herself talking in Japanese, and then they probably don't, have the translator with her, like, come through in the audio as much in the Japanese version. I don't know. That was my theory, because I kind of thought the same thing.
It's funny that you had that complaint, because Tori has gotten me into watching everything with subtitles, even, like, English movies.
Yes, I'm the same way.
So yeah, I watch everything with subtitles now, and it didn't bother me because the subtitles are on the whole time.
And then in my other, this is more of a question, but these people are getting rid of a lot of stuff, and sometimes they occasionally show like, oh, we're donating it to a Goodwill type service, but I'm just wondering, like, so are you selling all this stuff? Or are you just throwing it away? Because it's like, if I had all those massive amounts of clothes, or if I was getting rid of a bunch of DVDs and books, I wouldn't just throw them away, or just, I would try and get some money back.
I feel like they probably were, maybe on some level, maybe with some of the more expensive things, but most of the time when people want to get rid of clothes, they just take them to Goodwill.
Yeah, like, the one place that, the young gay couple they go to is, they go to the store called Out of the Closet.
That's an actual popular store in that area, apparently. I've seen people mention it several times.
Oh. Well, I kind of like the punny name of it.
I just want to mention... sorry.
No, nothing. And it's like, that was the one example I saw of someone going forward and donating their stuff away to a Goodwill type service.
Mm-hmm. I just want to mention another thing that's been brought up in the backlash, which I keep going back to, is this idea of like throwing away stuff. And the book just uses the word discard, which I think is a more neutral term, but I think people often associate as throw away into the garbage. But if you are yourself about to go on like your own little KonMari journey, or you're just trying to cut back in any way, I would really highly recommend like Goodwill, or I actually interned at a place called Reconsider Goods, which was a creative reuse center where we took in all sorts of things like old dolls and papers and photos and anything, and sold it as art supplies and as vintage goods to people. And if you can find something like that in your community, I would highly recommend it, because it's a lot better than just throwing things into a landfill, even though there are some things which will end up in a landfill.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but you should at least try and put it through the filter of like a charity or a Goodwill or a secondhand goods store.
Or sell it for a profit. I mean, these flea markets at cons are great for making some extra cash.
Exactly, and especially if you're going to be doing this, kind of like we said in our first episode, applying the KonMari method to your otaku lifestyle. That's a great way to do it. I'm not sure exactly how prevalent otaku flea market or otaku flea market-like stuff is around the country and the various con scenes around the nation and around the world and stuff, but if you've got a convention that does it, please take advantage of it. It's really, really useful.
Yeah, because I totally forgot about the flea market, and there was a bunch of other stuff that I probably could have taken with me just to get rid of. And it's just nice to declutter, and you're making a profit. Someone gets to enjoy the former thing that you had, and you might also find another thing that you've been looking for, so everybody wins.
So we did get a couple of questions from Facebook here. So our first one here is from Jeff, and Jeff asks, when is the time to get rid of DVDs, especially when Blu-rays are becoming cheaper and more expansive? Note, this is only in reference to shows that have been re-released on Blu-ray. Old favorites that have never been reprinted are exempt from this question. So I guess, for me, this totally just depends on the individual situation. So, like, for example, if, like, the DVD that was released is, like, particularly low quality, like, lower than a standard DVD should be, and the Blu-ray is, like, a significant improvement, I would say upgrade. If the Blu-ray has, like, a whole bunch of, like, brand new special features that were never on the DVD, just depending on how much, like, that TV show or movie means to you, you might want to consider upgrading. But, like, some things don't necessarily benefit a whole lot from an HD transfer necessarily. Like, I'll say one thing, somewhat recently I rewatched Toy Story on Blu-ray, and if you recall, like, Toy Story was made in, like, the early 90s, and it's very primitive CG animation compared to the things that we have now. So it doesn't really hold up visually super well whenever it was transferred into, like, a very, very crisp high definition. So honestly, I think Toy Story would look a lot better on DVD, personally. So I think it really just depends on what it is.
One example I have is I upgraded to the Blu-ray of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and in the movie there's two scenes. One that takes place in Janet's bedroom and one that takes place in Brad. And Janet's bedroom is put through a pink filter and Brad's is put through a blue filter. And then the Blu-ray, for some reason, Janet is still pink, but Brad's is like, there's no blue filter, it's just shot regularly, almost like through a white filter. And it just doesn't make sense. It looks weird when you kind of counterbalance it to the other scene, which is put through the heavy pink. And I don't understand what they were thinking when they did that, but kind of always, like, bothers me when I watch it now. Like, even though the rest of the film looks pretty okay, I do have some problems. Like, that one scene is so jarring because I don't know why they did that. When I didn't get a Blu-ray player until a few years ago, and when I did, I thought, well, I guess I have to get rid of all my DVDs now because they're obsolete, but DVDs really are still sometimes the best way to watch something, and they're still ubiquitous. They're not going to go away very fast like VHS did, and so I'm having to kind of teach myself to be more discerning about what I get on DVD and what I get on Blu-ray, and, like, is it worth it? Are the features better? Like, I know when Hocus Pocus this year last year rather, got its 25th anniversary Blu-ray, I have the DVD, like the cheap DVD they put out God knows when, and it's not anything fancy, and the Blu-ray is not much better. Like, they gave some fancy menus and a few extras that are okay, but the actual picture quality is, like, only nominally better. Like, I think only if you squint would you think it's any better, so... now that I've gotten more into buying used DVDs, like from used bookstores and stuff, I've just kind of had to teach myself that most of the time there's not going to be much difference for most movies that I'm into between a Blu-ray and a DVD. Some I will chill out more for a Blu-ray, like I'm really excited about that Perfect Blue Blu-ray coming out, or Criterion. If there's a Criterion, I will always probably pick the Blu-ray over the DVD. But for, 80% of most things I watch, there's not going to be much of a difference. I mean...
Right, and I think you mentioning Perfect Blue is a good example because the original DVD of Perfect Blue was pretty trash-looking. But I can almost guarantee you that this new Blu-ray transfer is going to be like a proper HD remaster of that film.
Before we were recording, we were talking about, whether or not Urusei Yatsura might get, or during the recording, my timeline is messed up, we'll get a decent release, and as you said, like, I've seen some of the Blu-ray coming out of Japan, and it does look really good, but, you know, I'm wondering if it'll be enough to justify a huge heavy treatment. I mean, I wanted a Cutie Honey Blu-ray, but the more I watch the DVD of the original 70s series, it's like it's probably going to look as it's going to look, and in a Blu-ray player, the upscales DVDs, it looks amazing. So, like, there's a point where you're just kind of like, there's not much difference other than the marketing, honestly.
Right.
Yep.
So, yeah, my advice would be, like, I wouldn't purge your DVDs just because the Blu-rays exist. I would evaluate it based on, like, a case-by-case sort of situation.
Become an informed consumer.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, let's see. Next question here. We got a question from Basil from the Awesome Cast. He seems to always want to ask us very interesting questions, so thank you, Basil. When does an anime no longer spark joy for you? So, I guess, well, typically Mari Kondo is talking about, like, your physical possessions, but I guess in this question he's talking more so about, like,
fandom?
Like when you fandom, or like how much you like an anime, like, because I think we've all been in the situation where, like, we were really into something like a while ago, but it just isn't something that we're into now. And I think that can reflect in your physical possessions, because, like, I'm not going to keep all of this merchandise of X show or X movie if I don't really like it anymore. So I guess it does matter more, like, if you actively like the thing in general, not just, like, the DVD or the plushie or whatever. So I guess, like, for you guys, when does an anime no longer spark joy for you?
I mean, for me, I embarrassingly was in the Black Butler fandom when I was in high school, and I grew out of it, and I think everyone has a series or franchise that gave them joy at one point, and then, you know, there comes a time where you have to look at all that Grell merchandise you bought and say, wow, why did I do this? But also say, you know, it made me happy at the time, and I sold it all off. And that's just part of life. I mean, we have burnout, and, you know, sometimes we burn out and we don't spark joy back up. I lost control of that metaphor, and it skidded off the road and took out several pedestrians.
No, it was a beautiful car crash.
Yeah, but like, I think that's just I mean, she talks about physical objects, and sometimes fandom is represented in physical objects, as we've spoken about, but I think also, like, just, you know, there comes a time where we have to let go, and sometimes, like, I was going to mention this earlier, but an example of doing the KonMari thing and then regretting it, as I mentioned in the Batman Ninja podcast we do, have a very weird dynamic with Batman comics and DC comics, and we got kind of our own Sam and Diane thing going on, where we fight and bicker and then always end up making out, and I don't know why. But I actually sold...
Wow, you know, you're a little closer to Batman than I realized.
Hey, no. But I actually sold off, like, several years worth of trade paperbacks, because I'm not a floppies person. They stress me out because they're so degradable and they tear. So, and I like to read my books. I don't want to just bag and board them and stare at them. But I lost years of collected trade paperbacks because I decided, well, I'm burnt out. I guess that means they don't spark joy anymore, and I sold them all off at a flea market, a con flea market, and at a used bookstore, and I have never regretted something so much in my life. I kept one book, the Batman animated art book, which is very valuable now, so I'm glad I held on to that, and I will hold on to it unless someone tries to yank it out of my cold, dead hands, but I still sold off a lot of books that I kind of regret selling. Some I don't, because I barely remember them, so obviously I did it kind of right, but I remember in particular I had an art book. It was there was a series of trading cards done in the 90s, and they were painted, and the artists behind them put out an art book of the paintings and the sketches and the preliminaries, and then sort of going through their process, and it was, I mean, some of the paintings are kind of ugly. I mean, some people didn't like them. I liked some of them, some I thought were hideous, but I still enjoyed skimming through this book, and it was always a book that, you know, if people looked on my shelf, they're like, oh, I've never seen this, and I got it for like $8 on eBay once, and I'm kind of embarrassed that I miss it to the point I'm probably going to have to look it up again and pay like $5 to $8 for this book that I threw out because I thought I would spark joy. So I will give everyone this advice, is be very careful, because part of it is you might give away something that you didn't want to give away after all, and you'll miss it, but I guess if it truly sparked joy, you're willing to pay for it again.
For me, I don't really have an anime that I haven't, like, lost spark of joy. Like, I still love G Gundam. I still enjoy Yu Hakusho and all the stuff I grew up on. It's usually other things that I've kind of lost joy over. So this is going to be a very Bill example of, for a while I was really into Doctor Who audio plays. And I would buy the latest releases for the latest Doctor because I wanted to keep up with the story. But I've come to realize that I still enjoy them, but I have no desire to keep up with the story right now because, one, I know it's Doctor Who, it's never going to stop. And two, it can be a very pricey endeavor because they have so many spin-off ranges off so many characters, and it's just at a certain point I've kind of got to the point where I'll buy it at a good price point, but I don't need to get it right away. And I have enough Doctor Who audio plays. Like, I think I have over 100 at this point, where just like I have enough of a catalog or a library that I can just download and listen to.
Yeah, I don't really think I could add anything that you guys haven't already said. Just if it was fine-tuned to me, it would pretty much be the same story. So I'll just move on to Basil's next question. So how in the world does her method work for most Shonen Jump series? I would say that, hey, if owning every, like, 80 to 100 volume book of One Piece that has come out, if that sparks joy for you, then hey, that's fine. Go for it and keep those. But I mean, if it doesn't, you don't have to.
In her second book, she meets a comedian that she is hired on as the comedian hires her as a client, and this comedian collects pachinko machines and has, like, in one room, like, a dozen loud flashing pachinko machines, and she talks about how just overwhelming it was for her and stressful because of all these noisy arcade machines. But she's like, it makes her happy, so I'm going to center and focus this part of the thing with my client around these pachinko machines, because if this is what gives her joy, then I want this to really be a special place for her. And so as much as people, I think, assume that Marie Kondo wants everyone to live like Marie Kondo, which God knows I couldn't, it's really more just saying, find the things in your life that really make you happy and give you purpose and make you want to get up in the morning, and try to focus on them, and also learn how to pick up after yourself because you're all adults.
Right, if you're going to own all of One Piece, you need to make sure it's on your shelf in order. 1, 2, 3, through volume 1 million.
As a One Piece fan, I love One Piece, but for me, I can't own any of, like, the Funimation releases or the manga, because it's just so much of it, and I would just be overwhelmed. Like, the manga, since it'll probably go into the hundreds at this point, would probably take up 2 shelving units, or two shelves. Where it just, like, if I really wanted to read it, I will go the digital route. Or I will just keep up with the anime, because that's much easier and less stressful than having all these books. But maybe the one One Piece thing I will get is maybe an occasional figure, and that'll be about it.
And you did bring up a good point there, Bill. It's like, I would say that with manga and comics and that sort of stuff especially, when there's good digital options out there, unless it's something like you really, really love and you want your own copy of it, which is totally understandable, maybe consider going the digital route. There's always the risk there with things, not always being guaranteed that they're going to be available digitally all the time. So physical versions are still always going to be king for that reason. But, if you're somebody that really likes to consume this stuff, you don't necessarily need to own a physical copy of all of it.
Yeah, like, in the manga space, Shonen Jump just came out with their service of give us $2 a month and you get access to our entire catalog, which includes Dragon Ball and One Piece and My Hero Academia. which is great because you can just access that content on the app, read it at your leisure, and not be so overwhelmed by having to have all the books if you want to reread them. Now, that being said, I think for certain things I like to have physical editions, like especially art books. Like, Austin, you recently gave me a One Piece art book, which I love, and I like to have the physical editions of the art because I can have more detail of it through my eye than a digital file. So I prefer, for art books, a physical version.
One thing I've really kind of learned to do also is like use digital as a sort of metric to see if I want to own the physical. So like if it's something on streaming or on like the Shonen Jump thing, like if I really enjoy it and I keep going back to it, then that might be a good clue that I kind of might want to own it myself in case it doesn't stay there forever. I mean, and if you are someone who might get their digital copies from less than legal means, if you're a pirate perhaps, then you might think that, well, if I like it this much, maybe I should get the fit. Like, that's for me a way I've used to justify getting digital thing or physical things, is instead of thinking, well, I'll buy it and I might hate it, well, I know I like this, I know I want this, so I feel more justified in spending the money and taking up the physical space with it.
Yeah,
I mean, to go back to the Shonen Jump example, I love Dragon Ball, but I only own the manga and the anime surrounding the Frieza arc. I have seen the others, they're fine, I like them, but if I'm like in a storm with no internet and somehow I have power to watch movies, I would rather watch the Frieza arc again than anything else. So like I would like to have that as a copy for myself.
Makes sense. Alright, so Basil's last question is, can you apply this method with conventions?
Yes.
Trying to think of how to contextualize her method into conventions.
Like going to a convention or the activities you do at a convention?
I
don't know. See, I think Basil is a convention director himself, so maybe he's asking it from that point of view. I'm not sure.
I think I can shed some light on this for how I kind of...
Yeah, what's your take on that?
So, I kind of see it as both actual conventions and the things that happen, so I'm going to say something that's going to be kind of cruel. I hate going to other people's panels unless I personally know them. Because every time I do, I'm very sorely disappointed. And that's me being incredibly rude, but I've learned something. When I go to cons, the things that keep me entertained are doing my own panels, going to panels of people I know personally, or people who I respect their work already, and sometimes going to the dealer's room, and sometimes cosplay. And those are the 4 things that keep me going. So if I'm at a con where I'm not doing a panel, no one I know is doing a panel, or only a few people I know are doing a panel out of the whole weekend, I'm not interested in buying anything because I don't need to spend the money, or it's not a good dealer's room, and I'm not cosplaying, or there's no good cosplay, then I'm going to be bored and upset, and I'm just not, it's going to be a waste of a weekend. So I've had to learn what does it take to make a con work for me is to have those things. So I have to have the things that spark joy at a con for me. Mm-hmm. And in terms of cons themselves, like an example is what we're talking about. Some of us want to go to Animazement, some of us want to go to MomoCon, and for me, I have heard that Momo is more of a party con, it's more faster paced, and I'm not like that personally. I'm a little old lady, I like slow things, I like to skew towards an older crowd, so I thought, well, maybe Animazement, since it's more kind of an educational and more on that side, and it's very heavy Japanese focus, maybe that's more where I need to go. So maybe MomoCon doesn't spark joy for me, or maybe, like Triad, I'm not going to that this year because, well, before it was right across the street from me, basically. I lived very close to it, and I got in for free. But now it's like, well, now I live somewhere else. I'll have to drive a long way, and I don't feel like doing a panel right now. And not as many people I know are going, so, it's weighing the pros and cons, and I guess that's not spark joy in the direct Kondo idea of it, but it's still kind of thinking about, like, cons are fun, but is every con fun? Like, books are good, but do I need every book? DVDs I like, do I need every DVD? That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I guess it can also apply, and you sort of touched on this as well. It's just like, do things at conventions that make you happy. Like, if cosplay sparks joy, do it. If cosplay does not spark joy, don't do it. There are other ways that you can fulfill your conventioning experiences. If going to panels sparks joy, if making panels sparks joy, then just do those things that make you really happy, and don't feel like you're having to force yourself to do something just because you think you have to.
If sitting through someone reading the Wikipedia article on Sailor Moon and getting all the facts wrong in a panel makes your skin crawl and wants you to break your own teeth, don't go to that panel.
I mean, that sounds like spark joy of a different variety. Maybe spark rage would be a little bit more accurate.
I wanted to spark something.
Alright, and then the last question we have here is from Adam, and he asks, why do I keep watching Black Clover? I don't know, man. If it's not sparking joy, don't watch it.
Because you hate watching it, which is a real thing.
Is that
Maybe,
the show with all
I mean,
the screaming?
Yeah, that's the show with the screaming. So if you are hate watching it and you're enjoying it and that's sparking joy for you, hey man, go for it. But if it's not, man, cut it out. Just go. Leave. Run away.
Yeah, I mean, hate watching it can be fun because you make fun of it and it makes you feel good. So I get it.
All right. Well, best of luck to you in figuring out doing your personal internal exploration as to why you are subjecting yourself to that series. All right, guys. So unless there's anything else you wanted to bring up, I think that's probably it for this episode.
I enjoyed our talk, and Sully, you had some very fine points on the KonMari method. Thank you for introducing it to me.
I feel bad because this was at one point an anime podcast and not a KonMari fan cast.
It's funny how things work out.
I love that tidy angel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's great. But yeah, I mean, we made it relevant to anime. We talked about how it affects the otaku lifestyle and conventions and manga and all that stuff. So this is still very, very much an anime podcast episode. Don't sell it so short.
Besides, it's interesting to go outside the box once in a while.
I agree.
As long as you properly sort that box afterwards.
With another very small box that you put the bigger box in.
And roll everything.
Make sure to fold your anime DVDs the proper way.
And the up, you had there where they're facing up.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, it was a pleasure as always. Bill, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at WBForeman, FOREMAN 999 on Twitter, where I mostly retweet jokes, maybe spout off about One Piece and how Whole Cake Island will never seem to end. I want it to end so badly. Yeah, you can just talk to me there.
What about you, Sully?
You can find me on Twitter at CALVA_KUN, Calvacun, and my Twitter is me sporadically deciding to either, retweet something I find charming or, go on and vague tweet about my life. So, it's something.
Pure and noble goals indeed. As for me, you can find me over at Bebop Shock, and that's Bebop as in Cowboy Bebop, and Shock as in Bioshock, and where I will probably be talking about Kingdom Hearts 3 for the next foreseeable future, just like the perceivable past as well. I've been talking about Kingdom Hearts 3 for many, many years now.
R.I.P. the Kingdom Hearts 3 memes. I will miss them.
It's fine. We're just going to create brand new memes, Bill. This is a time of rebirth, rediscovery, and
you're
that
right.
old man getting his comeuppance.
Instead of Kingdom Hearts 3 now in development, it'll be Final Fantasy 7 now in development memes.
Absolutely. Can't wait. All right, if you guys want to connect with the Third Impact Anime Podcast and all of the ways that you can do that, the best way to do that is over on Twitter, which is twitter.com/TI_anime. We also have a very, very active Facebook community group where we post a lot of cool things every single day and have wonderful conversations with wonderful people. That is facebook.com/groups/Third Impact Anime Community. We also have a link to our Facebook page there as well. And we also have our website where hold on. And we also have our website, which is thirdimpactanime.com, where you can see all of the blog posts that we write about various series whenever we get the inspiration to do so. You can find our episode archive over there, so you can see what all the things that we've talked about before in the past are. And you can see some of our convention coverage and some panel notes. There's a lot of cool things over there on the website. And thank you guys so much for joining us for this episode, and we will see you in the next one. So thanks. Bye.
Be glad there's one place in the world where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. You wanna go where people know people are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name.